Hello. Yes. Yes. Hi, everyone. For the people watching, I'm very sorry for the delay. Welcome at the Innovation Café. Everyone here in the audience, thank you so much for your patience. I'm so sorry. Welcome. For the people that haven't been here at the Innovation Café before, we're a networking event focusing on tech, design, and knowledge in the region of Eindhoven, showing what we do. And today we are actually working together with a partner, Med Emergent Lab Center. And we have the Art and Science Salon organized by them. I am just going to give the word to Carmin because we already had such a big delay. I hope to talk to you a little bit afterwards as well. So Carmin, here you go.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad to see that some people actually decided to come out. I know that it's been a while since we've been in public spaces. In fact, I think this is a good time to have one of my fun facts about one of our guests. Mathias here says this is the first time since August 2020 that he's been in a room with more than 2 people. There's a good first, huh? Anyway, my name is Carmin Karasic. I'll be your moderator this evening. Since we're starting so late, I'm not going to spend any time introducing myself. After all, I'm the moderator. My job is to try to make this enjoyable and to make our guests look brilliant. So, here is Mathias, and on screen we will be having Tamiko Thiel. And I think what I'd like to do right now is introduce Tamiko. She will introduce herself, but I want to give you a fun fact about her as well. She is the artist behind a thinking machine, an AI supercomputer that was actually designed based on a t-shirt. And I'm sure she can tell you more about that. I hope that it comes up in her talk.
Oops. So should I?
Oh yes, we're ready for you, Thomas.
Should I start my talk?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. In which case I need to share screen. Sorry, I didn't get the cue. Sorry. And I don't have any sound, so don't worry about that. All right, and I think I will shorten it slightly because we're running late. But since you asked, this is the connection machine. In my previous life, I was a product designer, and this was essentially the product design that made me decide I wanted to become an artist, because it was so much fun creating this form that would express the invisible nature of the machine, all the connections that are in wires that you don't see. And one important part of it was was making the doors transparent, so the status lights that were connected to the processor chips could show through. And this was as if that the machine was speaking to us. And I was hoping that that the logo on my T-shirt would be more visible, but that logo showing a cube of cubes, a 12-dimensional network inside the machine with the red lights coming through was really what, in the end, inspired the form of the machine itself. Fun fact number 2, a friend of mine, Joanna Hoffman, was working for Steve Jobs, both on the first Macintosh and on the next cube, and told me years after the fact that when they started working on the next cube, he saw the design of the connection machine and said, I want this designer to design my computer also. But Joanna said, well, Tamiko's gone off to Europe to become an art student, and I have no contact information for her. But if you look at his designs before and after, you will see really they went from sort of cuddly generic to really the visual sublime. So I do maintain that I had some role in that. I'm going to leave off a number of, well, I think I'll leave off the virtual reality part of my work and go right on to this augmented reality. You might think of virtual reality as being entirely in a synthetic environment where you only see that environment. Merged reality being where you can interact with physical objects and they could trigger changes in the virtual world, and then augmented reality where you see the environment that's around you, and thinking of your smartphone as a window into a different dimension, you see content that's overlaid on that. Now, I started out, I had been working for 15 years with virtual reality, started out working with augmented reality in 2010 when a friend who was also in the virtual reality area, Mark Squarix, just sent me an email saying, send some three-dimensional content that we can put up. We're doing an invasion into the Museum of Modern Art using a geolocative augmented reality. They don't know about it, and they can't stop us. So we all thought this was a great idea. I sent the piece Art Critic Face Matrix, which was a matrix of screening distorted faces of mine, as if to say AR will never become art. There was a flash mob there that I was unfortunately not able to attend, but it turns out that the person doing the Twitter feed for MoMA found out about it because it was a normal part of a Conflux festival for psychogeography, and they tweeted it. So of course that gave us an incredible boost. We got very excited about this new technology and formed a group called Manifest.ar. The year after, in 2011, I led our intervention into the Venice Biennial, and this was one of my works in public spaces, Shades of Absence, where the erased silhouettes are of artists who, in Venice for the Venice Biennial, were censored. So they're standing in these pavilions of words of censorship. We did other interventions in public space after that. This one was also organized by Mark Squarek. You might remember in 2007, 2008, the whole world financial system essentially collapsed, and a lot of money was spent rescuing the banks and the bankers so that they wouldn't have to suffer. Unfortunately, people who, for instance, who lost their mortgages and lost their homes did not have such help. So there was a lot of anger against the banking system, against the stock market. Because of that, the police barricaded the New York Stock Exchange with mounted police. You could only get in there if you were wearing a tie. And so we put our various types of augmented reality works up at the New York Stock Exchange so that people could create essentially what I now call visual memes. So this falling rain of gold coins, you could take over your environment, whether you're in front of the stock exchange, whether you're in Berlin participating in one of the protests against Occupy Wall Street there, or for instance in Australia. So these are all images that were sent to me by friends who were participating all over the world as I set this piece. So it could be seen and used essentially as a visual meme all over the world. I used the same technique in a completely different way for this piece, Golden Blessings, using a rain of coins as before, but asking people on the street to write on a whiteboard, how much do you need to be happy? I then took their photograph. I had an instant printer with me about this big. I printed out the images on a credit card sized instant photo and gave it to them as a good luck charm. And especially the gentleman here with the orange background had actually written, Heute kein Glück. Today, no luck. And the coins fell exactly so that they obliterated the word kein, and so it read Heute Glück. Today, good luck. So I gave him his good luck charm and said, hold on to this, it'll be good for you. Another completely different type of work in public space was a commission to work with Dr. Dominic Fitch of King's College London, and the Shard you might know of as the tallest building in London, but this little building next to it was actually at one point in the 70s the tallest building in London. Now Dr. Fitch is a specialist in visual disorders like palinopsia, where something something in your visual environment all of a sudden starts repeating. So we had a again sort of a flash mob. The opening of our piece had a huge crowd of people standing here at the base of these two towers, and when they looked through their smartphones or iPads through our app, they saw these repeated shapes. So we're really trying to, with this type of AR, I'm trying to get the people to really engage with their bodily senses, with their environment, and then also with the content that I overlay over that environment. Another piece involving the body even more was a commission for FACT Liverpool. Together with my Manifest.AR colleague, Will Pappenheimer, we worked with scientists who were working with biosensors. We used a very simple heart rate monitor that I also use for my when I'm working out at the gym. And Will got some money to pay a student to create an app that would take the heart rate from whoever was wearing it, and then send it to our AR servers. And if you keep your heart rate at the correct level, so not too lethargic, but also not too excited, at a medium level where you're in tune with your environment, and every 10 seconds, it would plant a bunch of vegetation. Here's the map showing how much vegetation we planted in Liverpool during this project. So again, the idea is to make the person, through the app, even more aware of their surroundings, and to build a physical relationship through the kinesthetic sense, through the proprioceptive senses, with the virtual content, which is very real but very intangible. Another piece that shows a different way of interacting now directly with the content, Evolution of Fish, is an app where you have swarms of fish floating around. You can direct them by moving your smartphone, and they will follow your lead. But if you agitate them too much, if you interfere too much in their life cycle, they turn into plastic, as you see on the screen. We premiered this piece at Alice Beach in Florida, feeding the image from our iPad into a very strong projector that projected the image then on a two-story house. And of course, because it's an augmented reality app, anyone who's in front of the iPad you would see, and this was very consciously done so that the people would see themselves essentially in this aquarium with the fish and with the plastic. We didn't realize what a hit it would be. We had lines literally going around the block to have people have their loved ones photograph them as they were in our virtual fishbowl, as you will. And this is an aspect that I think is also very important about about AR, that goes beyond just kind of a, well, here's a selfie, here's me, because of course when you start explaining this image to other people and explaining, well, why is this plastic swimming around? You start repeating essentially the message that we're trying to get across to you, whether or not you really kind of grokked it when you first encountered it. So I'm going to leave it at that, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Yeah, Lars. It's really beautiful work, and I have to say, looking at it with my own artistic past, I really see a lot of activism in there, which is super cool. And I also saw a lot of overlap with the work that Mathias does, especially with respect to the work he does related to environment and how the body is interacting with the environment. At least some of the projects I read about your work, which feels like a lead-in to your introduction.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we quickly wait for the slides to appear, and you can do it. It's okay. Yes, that's the one. Hi, I'm Mathias Funk, and I got my first computer when I was young, and it was in 99, '93, and I got it with my brother, but it was my computer. And it was basically also connected to the internet, but only via minutes. Right? It was a dial-up modem thing, and it was hooked into my grandparents' dial-up connection, so phone connection. And because there was no space for some creativity in my grandparents' place, we were sitting underneath the place, next to the foundations. So there was a bit of sand, there were big wooden poles, and then there was a computer. And that's when it all started. And the first thing I did was I built a vocabulary trainer for my friends at high school. Then my other friend at high school trashed the computer by switching from 220 volts to 110 volts, which blows up the power supply. And after the computer was fixed, after weeks, I mean, it was like a small town in Germany, I wrote a computer virus, and then I stopped talking. Okay, and right now I'm working at TU Eindhoven. This is the technical university in this city where this event is taking place. And I work in the industrial design department as a teacher, but also as a researcher since about 10 years and a few months. And I've done a lot of other stuff before, so I have a background in computer science and electrical engineering, and there's a lot of hopping around in places until I found the place where I'm right now, which I'm really loving. So, yes, there's also a musician joke in here, and well, let's get started. Next slide. Oh, this is my clicker. Okay. You do it. You do it. Multitasking, right? Okay. So what we do at Industrial Design, we do design research, right? So we research how we can design new products, we research tools, we research methods, and we basically ask questions, right? Any researcher asks questions. And one question that I ask myself and the people I work with is, what helps designers create entirely new experiences and do that faster than before? And often the answer to that is finding a new technological device, a means to give designers handles onto sometimes very complex technology and then create with that and be faster, right? Because as a designer, sometimes you feel like, I really want to work with that technology, but that takes ages to learn sometimes, right? And then the tiny bits that are left for your creativity, your actual job to design are really small. So that's one of the reasons why we think, okay, if we give designers tools to be faster in getting to speed with technology, then they can design more and they can design cooler things, and that's really a big driver. The second thing is, I asked myself, so what is the role of data in products? And I mean, all of you have products in your pockets that work by means of data. Any smartphone, any app, anything that is connected literally works with a lot of data. It produces data, that's what you all know, and it's the branch of activism that we might want to talk about later, but it also consumes data. So any app that looks at the weather consumes data from the internet and uses that to show you, okay, it's a effing hot day today, for example. So what we are interested in is data-enabled experiences, so new experiences that are brought to us because we can use data. And then how do we design that? How can we make it really fantastic for people? And finally, we are interested in systems of smart things, so systems of products that talk together. This is super exciting, actually, because usually products are just by themselves. And even if they're connected to some kind of mothership in Silicon Valley, well, that's a one-to-one thing. And it's very rare that products actually talk to other products in your context and do not share the data with any kind of entity outside your home. So there are reasons for privacy, data protection, et cetera, that we really look into to create new experiences. Next one. Yes, so I show you 3 projects very quickly. The first one is called the Peekaboo House, and it's basically a small house with a camera inside and a lid in front of it. And we use that for our design research exploration. So we do studies with people, and they take this device into their home, and we study their every day. We study what they are doing, how they are living, how they are preparing their food, how they are going about cooking their food. And the point here is not that there's a camera and there are sensors and whatever, but there's a camera that is really protecting privacy. So it actually closes up and allows you to allow the camera to actually take a photo. So this is a really cool project with Yuting Cheng at the university. And then we go to the next one quickly. So this is a bit of a hairy project, as you can see. This is Idlebot. And Idlebot was started with friends from Cologne, from Puppet Empire, and a master's student in our department. And the idea was, can we create a social robot that is actually not social, that is just waiting, right? So imagine the situation, you are at the dentist, and it's not the most pleasant experience, and you're sitting there, and you're kind of nervous, right? So what is going to happen? What are they going to find? And will they actually drill today or not? Or put something on top or do an X-ray? And so all these thoughts, right? And we thought, okay, how cool would it be if there would be this thing that is waiting next to you and is completely calm. And it's completely taking all the energy out of the air. It's like, oh yeah, it's waiting, right? So there's a pretty cool video you can check out later. But that's Idlebot, really nice. And the last project, that is a project that we did here in Eindhoven in the Van Abbe House. And this shows basically a form of data visualization that is multi-screen and collects all kinds of data from different sources, but then shows it in a completely different way. So usually when you show and display data, then you talk about charts, graphics, numbers, etc., all that noise, right? But we had this idea, okay, can we create something that is actually really calm and you just see it from the corner of your eye and then you know. That would be fantastic. Not on all this buzzing around and numbers and charts and etc. And so that is the third project. And you can also check out online. And now comes my last slide. Yeah, right. So what is this crazy person doing now? He's walking to his bag. So I brought 2 books. You can check them out. Just give them around and return them, please. So, yeah, it's an interesting topic. If you want to teach creatives how to work with code, then there's of course a lot of material out there, a lot of stuff that you can read, your courses, tutorials, etc. But there's always this feeling like, yeah, can we do it differently? Can we give them different handles onto their creation process with code and not just give them a reference book for a programming language and then learn it and then you can do something. So we completely rebuilt that kind of idea into a book and you can check it out. It will come your way soon. Yeah, so we are concerned with processes. When we research design, we are concerned with processes. How do people find their process? How do they find a process that really fits to their flow of creativity, to the context that they're designing for, to the people that they're designing for? So that's really interesting, and maybe that's the bridge back to you. That we see that when artists create, when designers create, the process matters. When we see how much technology is in art right now, we think UX matters, so user experience, more than before. Everybody can go to a museum and look at a painting, but if you want to experience AR in context, well, you need good UX. You need a device that can do this. You need accessibility, and you need the money to buy that device, right? So these are concerns, and I think we need to address that as well. And addressing that means sometimes that the creator needs to grow, that they need to develop new skills, new insights, new awareness. And that's it for me. You can contact me via Google. You find me via Google. I forgot to put my contact information, but you're all super smart people. You'll find me. Thanks.
Mathias Funk. Okay, and now we are reunited with Tamiko. And you can hear us and everything, right? Okay, excellent. When I look at the work from both of our guests, I start thinking about why is augmented reality art important in public space? I think that Mathias began talking about that, where he brought up issues of privacy, things like that. And Tamiko also touched on that when she started using her art, I would call it in activist ways, trying to increase awareness, especially where she described people wanting to be photographed with the fish, and then that gave her the opportunity to talk about the pollution, the plastic, that's also part of the fish's environment. So what I'd like to hear from, let's start with Tamiko. Why is augmented reality art important? Why should we have this discussion this evening?
Why is that not working? There we go. I think it's a really has a number of features which have not been available to us before. One of them, of course, being what I talked about with the MoMA and Venice Biennial incursions, that we can put our work wherever we want to. And if you speak about public art, especially like Christo and Jean-Claude, for instance, they talk about how the process of getting permissions for doing their works of art in public takes up 99% of the time that they work on the art project, and for them it's part of the artistic idea, is essentially playing around with these bureaucrats' minds. But most of us don't want to spend most of our time dealing with getting permissions to put things in public space. And with AR, we don't have to. In AR, I mean, I think my fastest turnaround was maybe 2 hours. And in Portugal, I realized that, there was a square a couple blocks away from my hotel where there was where the Carnation Revolution started in the 70s to throw over the dictator. 2 hours later, I had a rain of carnations falling down in that square. So this really gives us an unprecedented way to be able to express ourselves in public spaces. And because in AR, it's essentially sort of like a TV where you have one box, but in that box you have all these different channels. And with AR, you have one smartphone, but at one location you can place all sorts of different ones. So, for instance, in a work that I'm advising in San Jose, Japantown, you have 9 different artists who are putting their hidden histories from the Chinese American community, from the Japanese American and the Filipino American community, all in the same area. And these are, if we wanted to have 9 works of public art in that small little piece of the neighborhood, how many years do you spend getting permission? So that feature really enables all sorts of different layers of history, layers of story to be told in public spaces by people who do not have the wherewithal to get a statue of themselves on horseback or even a bronze plaque put on some building.
Thank you. That makes me wonder about using the public space. And now I'd like to address Mathias and ask him what his thoughts are on people usurping public space for their own art. Do you see any issue with that, or what's your opinion on that?
I don't think I see an issue. It's public space, right? So it belongs to you as well, right? I think that should be super clear. I mean, public space, and we see that sometimes in the world, that public spaces are now restricted, that there are laws how you can assemble in public space, what you are allowed to drink, at which hours, and so on. I mean, it's very relevant also during the pandemic, that public space is becoming scarce. Public space is becoming something like like we cannot really access in the same way maybe as before. So we need to value public space, and I think that's fantastic. The second point is AR provides us with very personal lenses. I think this is the layer idea that Tamiko talked about. So if we have this, it's like a loop. Think of children looking for worms in the sand. They have a loop to make something bigger, to amplify something. And this idea of a lens is super powerful when you look at public space. To investigate, to wonder, to think about stuff, to relate stuff. Like, oh, I see it here and I see it here. Well, there must be a connection, right? So these kind of things can be extremely powerful. And yeah, sure.
You just said that public space is getting scarce. And Tamiko made the comment that it's great to be able to put her art anywhere she wants. Like she gave the example of being the square near her hotel in Portugal. Well, this makes me wonder, if public space is getting scarce, how will people continue to be able to use public space in this sort of radical way? So can you, again, I'm going to stick with Mathias a moment longer, but do you know of, can you elaborate more on this idea that public space is becoming scarce?
I'm really not an expert on policy and public space. It's just that I look at these things and I see that there are restrictions. So, but it's maybe the role of art, or maybe not the role of art, to fight back and to defend our right for public space. That we can actually go out, that we can enter parks, that we can play somewhere. And on the other hand, we see that public space is becoming accessible in a different way. So if you look at cities that have been turning off car lanes in all over the world, actually, suddenly we see, okay, that's actually public space that belonged before to us, but now we can access it, and we can access it with our bikes, or we can just walk there, and that is really cool, right? So it's not all bad. Actually, we see things in transformation, and we just need to do our part to maybe kind of speed up this transformation.
Tamiko, do you think that your art can help in the process of speeding that up?
Oh, definitely. Is my mic on? Yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of gray zones in public space. There's even what is called public space is heavily regimented, as you both have been saying, and if you don't question that, if you don't try to use it, then it goes unquestioned. People don't think about it, and so, for instance, using AR to put content there to encourage people to come to do interventions, to do flash mobs at these locations is a way that artists can sort of tickle that part of the public consciousness and make people realize that the space is potentially not as public and as free as they think. So I think for artists who are interested in the issue of public space and the issue of the sorts of restrictions that Mathias is talking about, AR and creating sort of a flash mob to view the AR is one way that they can really approach it very directly and bring it into the public consciousness and start a public debate about, this particular location, and is that really public space? And if it is, then shouldn't we have a voice in how it's used?
Yeah, I definitely think that's really important, because one of the best roles that artists can play is to play around with these topics, get people to think about them, because, as you said, they just go unnoticed. This is reminding me of your presentation, Mathias, where you spoke about Peekaboo House. But in your website, I read about another project that was about a home, the Sandbox. I'll read what I wrote down about it. The Sandbox is an augmented scale model of a house featuring connected sensors and actuators. what I'm wondering is, can your Internet of Things sandbox help us to understand how our own home influences our own behavior?
Yeah, so this is another research project indeed. So this is a collaboration with several colleagues actually, and we're using the IoT Sandbox, so Internet of Things Sandbox. It's as a vehicle for designing new things in the home. So I'd like to explain that a little bit. So when we work in industrial design education, then many of our students, let's say 20, 30 students for one semester, work together and design their own projects. Now, in the past, they would all design their own thing. And if you would attempt to put them all together, it would be super messy. Nothing would fit, nothing would really collaborate, and it would be just mind-boggling mess. So that's why we have this idea. So can we force everyone to design in one space? So no more multiverses, no more like anything is possible. No, you have to actually respect the context. So the IoT Sandbox is a scale model, and students design it. We had a really fancy version of it at the Dutch Design Week. It's also coming with all kinds of characters and behaviors and days in the life of whoever you have. And this provides actually a frame for our design students to design in. And it can be really tough at the beginning, especially when things are like, whoa, why is it so constrained? But at the end, when we have the show after 5 months, it is fantastic because suddenly you see that all of them build a small puzzle piece for a new reality that can play in 10 years in this house, but it all works together. And you can really see like, okay, there are services that play together, and if they collect data from here and here, they can do something new. And that is what we want to do, and that is also what we research with this.
But can an individual, what would someone gain by doing that? But I can understand what the students are gaining, but can other people gain something from this?
Yeah, I think that's in the end the difference between a design tool and a product,
okay,
right?
Yes.
So this is not a product. This is not something that we sell or that people can build for their own home. But this is really a tool specific for design research and design education. And in that context, it works really well.
Okay, that's really good. Then that really helps to pinpoint the difference between a product and a tool.
Yeah, and actually the second part of the question, so how does a home influence us? And just to push something out there, any kind of new technology that integrates into our everyday. Think back, that we have central heating, that we have dishwashers, and that we have a microwave oven. They slowly but certainly change how we lead our lives. They change our practices. The washing machine changes the practices of cleaning your clothes. You can do it more often, you can do it alone, you can do it in a fraction of your time. And all these things are very interesting points to research, to see, okay, how is technology influencing our lives? And is it all good? And that's, of course, a question that we always need to ask.
Yeah, that's true. Because as it influences us, it changes our behavior. And we don't always know what that change is going to bring. Speaking of technology influencing art, I'd like to go back to Tamiko. Tamiko, I heard that you had some experience with NFT. I think that's pretty interesting, and that's certainly new technology. Would you mind explaining what NFT is and tell us something about your experience?
Yeah, this is a little bit weird. NFT, a non-fungible token. Fungibility is exchangeability. So a euro coin, for instance, is a fungible token because any euro coin is exactly the same as any other euro coin. So a non-fungible token would be is a unique token. So this is essentially just a little bit of text data It's registered on the blockchain, and the blockchain is simply an online software registry that, however, you have these data entries that are put together in a block, and the block is sort of sealed by various software methods, some of which use enormous amounts of electricity and others newer ones which don't. But if you insert then your NFT, your non-fungible token, which is, like I said, is simply a section of text, into this sealed block, and your NFT says, Tamiko Thiel created an artwork XYZ and sold it to, Matthias Funk on June 17th, in the middle of this event, then no one else can change that. It becomes a permanent record. And if I say, my artwork is unique, this is the only one, then anyone can go and see, okay, someone's trying to sell me this same work of art. Is that real, or is it a copy? And the art world has kind of resisted acquiring and selling digital artwork, because they say anyone can make a copy. Well, that's also true of a photograph that you put as a high resolution file on the internet. It's also true of a video. It's also true of a performance, but somehow the art world has been very happy collecting and selling those. But with other forms of digital art, they've said, no, we can't do that. So the system has captured the interest of the art world, partially because it seems to be a way of being able to have a permanent record of whether or not this particular digital file is actually the let's say, unique work that this particular artist says it is, and partially because this one artist, People, sold a work of his for $69 million recently. Now, if you look at it, what's been going on is that certain types of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Ethereum, have had a huge escalation of value in the recent past, and so there's a collection of people out there who are, Ethereum or cryptocurrency millionaires or billionaires. And there's not much they can spend it on. There's not much you can buy. I mean, Elon Musk created a couple of really big spikes and falls in the Bitcoin value by buying Bitcoin and then saying, we're going to let you buy a Tesla with Bitcoin, and then saying, oh no, we're not going to let you buy a Tesla with Bitcoin because it turns out Bitcoin is extremely environmentally damaging to create. So what do you do if you've got all this wealth and you can't spend it on anything? Well, the Nifty's collectibles, and it's really started out with just these crypto kitties, these images of these low-res images of kitties, but it's like trading soccer cards or baseball cards. They're as much as anyone wants them to be worth. So all of these millionaires or billionaires started having nothing else to do under lockdown, started trading them and buying them and selling them. And where there's a lot of money, people get very excited and they dive in and say, this is going to change the world. So that's what's happening. And I have to say, I got sort of out of the blue an invitation from a crypto art curator, Lady Phoenix, to participate in the sale of Nifties at Christie's, New York. And this was the first curated art Nifties that Christie's sold. And it put me in a bind because they're using the Ethereum blockchain, which is environmentally damaging. So I got this email, and And I sort of did a mental, I'm not a Catholic, but I sort of did a mental crossing of myself and wrote back, I'd love to do it, but I can't do it on the Ethereum blockchain because it's damaging. If you'd let me do it on a different blockchain, which is not ecologically damaging, I can do it, but I realized that's not where the collectors are. And I sent it off and thought, okay, that was the end of my career as a nifty artist. But then they came back and said, actually, Christie's is interested and curious to figure out how we could work out a process where we could reduce the damage from a sale. So it turns out we're still working on the process. We've made some preliminary discussions, but it's not gone through yet. And I'm just trying to learn as much as possible about what are the steps that really create environmental damage, and how could a more sustainable process be made. And a lot of curators who have asked me to do nifty drops are saying, well, tell us when you find out, and then we'll do something with you. And I'm going like, okay, well, hang in a bit longer because we haven't quite gotten there yet. So I really at this point I can't say much, but I think it's here to stay. You see, the Uffizi in Florence has decided that they make digital images of their works and sell them on the nifty market to get funds to help make up for the reduced amount of entry fees that they've gotten. So right now, at least, it's a new source of income for the art world. It's collectors that haven't participated in the art world before, and that's why the art world and the art market is very excited about it right now. And whether this is, the Dutch knew what happened when people got really excited about collecting tulips, and it might be another, tulip boom and bust, but we'll see.
Wow, thanks for that. I would like to ask the audience if they have questions about what she's talking about, because I don't know. And if you do have a question, let me know, and then I'll repeat your question. I can hear you. She probably can't, but does everybody know what she's talking about? NFT, this auction with Christie's. Are there any questions there about that? Yeah. Just say your question. I'll repeat your question. So the question, if I get it right, is, do we see, and it's more for Mathias, I think you said, or in general, okay. Is this idea that the NFT is something that the artists can use, but is this something that's really helping art, or is this more of just a capitalist move? Is that close? Okay.
Right. Well, it's definitely a capitalist move, and it could have the potential of really helping artists. One thing, for instance, is that visual artists, fine artists, have never gotten royalties. Royalties are a concept with music. They're a concept with books, where you're selling many copies of the same thing, and each time a little bit of the sale goes back to the author or the musician, ideally. And this idea has never existed in the fine art world. And so part of what you write onto the blockchain when you sell a work is what's called a smart contract, which, as smart in this case, just means it's either a piece of software or a piece of data, where you could, for instance, require that with the next sale, that a portion of the money from the sale goes back to the artist. You could also, for instance, write into the contract that the artwork has to be held by the first collector for, let's say, a year before it can be sold again, so that it's not subject to the sort of flipping where one collector buys it and sells it, right afterwards for maybe twice as much, And of course, the artist doesn't get any percentage of that next sale. The only thing is that, so these are the ideas that people promulgate as being positive parts of how artists could benefit from Nifties, and those were a lot of the ideas that the curator Lady Phoenix wanted to also institute in the sale. So each of the artists worked with a specialist from the company Monograph, which was started by Kevin McCoy, who created the first Nifty back in 2014, and had individual contracts written for them for what they wanted, how they wanted their artwork to be used. And this is something that artists have very, very, very little say. Once they've sold an artwork, they often don't even know who bought it. So that's the potential. On the other hand, people point out that if the Nifty is sold on a different blockchain, then the smart contract can't be transferred, so you could just ignore it. And then they say, well, do your research, read up on the person who bought it, read up on the person who created it, and they're telling, essentially, well, there's this incredibly new technology that will solve all these problems, but guess what? They don't solve all the problems. So for that, just go back to how we've always done it before, and make sure that you know what you're doing. So we're right now in this really, really weird time when we see a lot of potential also for artists for the first time in their life or the first time in history having more control over what happens with their art. But the question is whether the technology will actually move in that way. And there's some platforms like Hick and Nunc using the Tezos blockchain that are trying to create a completely different environment. It's kind of where the hip artists are hanging out right now. They're selling largely to each other. I think there's even a cap on the total price. There might be a cap on the total price. So that platform is saying, we don't want to participate in this hyper-capitalism. We want to explore how we can create a platform that really supports artists, and where the sales mean that you have now more freedom to make more artwork. So that's, I think, why it's getting so much attention right now, because it is a really new phase in this technology, and people who dive into it right now potentially have the ability to direct in which direction it goes, and whether it becomes a force for good or a force for evil, as they say.
Thank you. That was a deep dive, a really, really deep dive. And because I think there might be people that still might be wondering, what's she talking about? I'm just going to bring this down to like a 3-year-old level. If you make a digital artwork, let's say it's digital sculpture, or it's augmented reality art that Tamiko has been showing us. How would you sell that? Because it's not physical. How does a person say, oh, I love it, I want to buy it? If that were a painting, you could say, I love it, I want to buy it, and you have a physical thing. But if you've got a digital thing, how does that work? And what she was saying is, up until now, there hasn't really been a way that you could really make money on digital art, especially the idea of having it sold at the Christie's auction. Now they've found a way to do that. And the question that we had come from this side of the room was, well, aren't we just making art, aren't we just taking even this kind of art and making it even more of the capitalist machine? And Tamiko addressed that as well. But the main thing here is that, hello? Oh yeah, it's back. Art has moved into this arena. Digital art has moved into this arena that allows for people to trade digital artworks just the way that they're trading paintings or sculptures or the more traditional artworks. That's really what this conversation was about.
I'd like to make one interjection there. I mean, there's actually, digital artworks have been sold for years and even decades using completely traditional methods. I've sold artworks, and you just make a paper, a signed paper certificate of authenticity, and people, and museums, people have accepted that. There, however, have been, a section of the art market that said no, that doesn't give enough protection against forgery. So it's not that digital art hasn't been sold before or couldn't be sold before. It's just that now with the possibility of using a blockchain as a registry, more of the art market seems to be willing to risk buying and selling digital arts. There's definitely a degree here rather than an either or.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarity. So it's more that this has moved into a different realm and gives it more opportunity. Let's see. We're checking the time.
Maybe quicker spots?
Oh, yes, please.
So this is not investment advice. So if you look at the blockchain, if you look at NFTs, if you look at Ethereum, if you look at stable coins, this is for sure super exciting technology. This is completely fascinating for a lot of people in tech, obviously, because this allows us to solve a trust problem algorithmically and not rely on human organizations or civilization-given organizations to validate something, right? That said, if you see what the business model is, that is ransomware, money laundering, and transactions that are super fast, actually super slow, smart contracts. This is something where the European Union is on a path to regulate now, to have a transaction tax. So if you look at these things, if you look at the signals of scamminess in the NFT space, then I wonder, would you want that in art? Would you want that in society? And I mean, you need to do your own research. Everybody needs to do their own research. This is not investment advice, but be careful. It has many signals of gambling. And as Tamiko said, validation has happened for decades. That auction houses, that museums, they have validated artworks. They have validated the rights to artworks, the access to artworks, to permit people or not permit people to see art. I mean, we're coming back to public space here, right? And I think this is a very dangerous thing, to encode transactions, contracts, but also art in a very, let's call it neoliberal way, in software. And every day you look on the tech news, there are problems with smart contracts, that the people who have been writing these contracts, I mean, this is an algorithm, this is like a function that executes in a certain way, and there's just a lot of money behind it. They have been caught again and again and again by programming mistakes, by bugs. The latest, I just read it on the news before this event started, the latest bug was $262 million were lost because of a one-off. Anybody who's in programming is basically not counting to 10, but counting to 9 for stupid reasons. So this kind of stuff is really, really risky. Yeah? So just saying it loud like that in a bold way, be careful. Do your research. End of story.
Wow, thank you. We needed that. But since you were talking, I would like to ask you about something that I understand you love, and that is to think about design's real-world impact. So, first of all, just before I go there, is it okay if we go a little bit longer because we started later? Is that okay? All right, thank you. So what I was going to ask is, since you were talking about design, you've brought it up quite a few times, I know it's your thing, could you give us some real-world impact examples? And like, you know, the expression, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Let me give you one thing. The air conditioning system, I think this is on our minds anyway today. Air condition is the thing. And it's good, it's bad, and it's ugly at the same time. And I think that gives the right spin back. So if you design something and you put it out there, sometimes and quite often you don't know what it will do when it's adopted by people. That's why we do design research, that we try to better understand, but still there's a certain uncertainty in how products are adopted. So if you look at the air condition market, I mean, this is collapsing right now for obvious reasons, but what are air conditioning systems? They cool down a space. That's great. And this has saved countless of lives. I mean, there are really tens of thousands of people who die every year, and they're getting more because they overheat. These are especially elderly people, people who cannot take care of themselves perhaps, or people who have a strange idea of how they should ventilate their space. And they simply die because of the temperature. And so air conditioning is fantastic. I think it has brought a lot of progress to many areas of the world where without air conditioning it would simply be not possible to have a business center maybe or something like that. But then again, anybody who has worked in an air-conditioned space knows, well, you almost need a humidifier as well, right? Air condition and a humidifier, otherwise it's getting too dry, and then you get a cold, yeah? Because air conditions are notoriously low, right? You go into an air-conditioned space, it's like 18 degrees, and then you need to wear a jacket, right? A jacket. And we talked about this before. Air conditioning will have a huge sustainability impact in the future. I mean, we're not talking about heating our spaces anymore because of global warming, thank you for that. We're talking about cooling spaces in the future. And this will come to the Netherlands, this will come to any part of the world where we have to really think about how do we cool our spaces in the future. So the solution, air conditioning system, was fantastic in the 60s when it was brought to the market. But now we really have to think about, is that design really what we want right now? Does it make us sick? Does it make the world sick? Should we do something else, right? And there are new designs out there that do things differently, that work just via ventilation or that work in other ways. New architecture, fantastic topic, right? Can we ventilate buildings just by opening windows and having a chimney solution or something like that? So we are constantly designing better things, and I think that's really the hope here, that a design is not like meant to be there forever, but it's meant to evolve and sometimes be replaced.
Yeah, thank you. Tamiko, I'm wondering, when people are in the environment of one of your augmented reality arts, how would they know that it's there?
Yes, that's problem number one. I actually wanted to say something quickly about Mathias. You know, I taught a couple of semesters in Singapore, and people there pointed out, you know, air conditioning is what made it possible for Singapore to evolve into the sort of the first world nation state that it is now. And when they were kids in the 60s, they were sitting there like barely able to get through their studies because it's just, you know, it's 32 degrees and muggy the whole year round. So it's a very good point that he made. So back to your question, Carmin, with AR, social media is really really has been what AR needs. And probably if AR had been invented before social media, it wouldn't have worked so well. So you need to, I guess I've talked a number of times about flash mobs, getting a flash mob to congregate. And that, of course, when you've got a whole bunch of people there who you've activated through your social media, then they're there and they're looking at things, looking at the AR on their smartphones, and that makes other people curious and come over and say, well, what are you looking at? What's here? And that's how you can make it known that there's an AR there without being able to put something at that site itself. So because we spend a fair amount of our lives on social media, it's become fairly, a lot easier to really let people know that they can go to one location, and by going through these steps that they can look at it. And without that, in 2010 when we started out, we were standing in the middle of Piazza San Marco and handing out postcards that we made to passers-by and trying to explain to them what we were doing. And of course, at that point, no one had heard of augmented reality. So the other thing that really helped augmented reality was Pokemon Go, because all of a sudden we could just say, oh, it's like Pokemon Go, it's the same technology. But social media and presence on the spot and handing out postcards, those are essentially what you have to do in order to actually make people understand that there is something interesting to look at there.
Okay, so that's your way of getting the audience, or at least the public, to engage with your art. Do you have something to add to that? Oh, okay. It's getting pretty warm. I have one more question, though, that I would like you to answer. You talked about people engaging with data. You talked about how we consume data. And to me, data is sort of parallel, and it's a similar question that I just asked Tamiko. How do you make people aware of what you're doing? So how do you make people aware? I understand if you're designing tools and you're working with your students, but if you say to us, we are consuming data, how do you make us aware of that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. How we are aware of that data is being collected, that data is being consumed. I think this is all very much hidden from us, and for very important reasons. Sometimes it's too complex. Sometimes it's something that would make us maybe curious and think about, okay, do we want this data to be collected? Do we want this data to be accessible? Do we want to share this kind of information? And there's a very popular way to phrase it is the privacy paradox, right? That we all share a lot of data on social media, and it's photos of our homes, of our friends, of our partners, of our pets, photos of our bodies, and at the same time we are concerned that the government knows too much about us, right? That there are transactions being recorded, that like credit card transactions are basically purchasable, and so anybody could go to Visa or MasterCard and say, I want a bunch of credit card transactions, and I think that's possible. So these kind of things are of course playing out in a certain area of activism where you might want to engage and think about, okay, what can we do against it? But it matters to all of us in the end, how we use data and how we have access to data. I mean, I talked about that earlier. In the context of accessibility and equity, that in any society there are still people who don't have access to data, who don't have a mobile plan on their phone or contract, who need to go to a franchise, McDonald's, Starbucks, sit outside to do their homework. I mean, if you think about it, it's unbelievable, especially during a pandemic, right? people are endangering themselves to do what they have to do to pass a class in school, right? So access to data and awareness of data and seeing how data is kind of influencing our lives is so multifaceted. It's hard to give like this one answer, like how to make data like, aware or visible. But there's a lot to do.
Yeah, it's really a deep question. I knew that. I would like to know if there are questions from the audience, from either online or the people here in the room. No? Okay, then I would like to move to my last question for our guests. I want a takeaway. We've talked about a lot of things. It's been really broad. It's been really deep. It's hopefully been new and interesting for our audience. But what can you give us as experts that's just a thing that we can take away and hold on to from what we've learned this evening? We'll start with you, Tamiko.
From what I've learned this evening, I think that would take a little bit more processing, but if I can instead say what I'd like people to take away with the idea of augmented reality is that the world that's around us is not just what is physically in front of you. It's not what is visually in front of you. The world around us is full of layers and layers of stories, and I think augmented reality is really just the latest tool for making these stories somehow more understandable or more visible or more approachable, and I think it's with Apple and Google really not only supporting it but really pressing it. I think it's going to start being another step up in sort of the social media where people are all going to start putting information, maybe about themselves, maybe about things that they care about, that they want other people to know about, into the environment, and this is really enriching the layers that have always been there, but maybe have been inaccessible because there's a lot of control of the public space and of the messages that get transmitted there. So that's how I like people to think of AR, not as, oh, there's this funky little image on my smartphone, but, oh, here's a window into layers and layers of meaning that could be attached to this site or to this place.
Oh, thank you. That's a good takeaway.
Okay, my takeaway is maybe connecting to that. So I tried to say it already on my last slide, but if we zoom out of art and public space and AR, and we're looking at new creations with new technologies. And whenever we use new technology or more technology, which is the trend, then we're transferring something from our human skill set and knowledge and for our empathy to this technology. We encode something, we write code. And my takeaway is more like a question or like a plea to the creators out there, or maybe there are creators amongst you, that don't forget what you lose if you just transfer aesthetics and beauty and empathy into code. Don't forget the people for whom you make this. Don't forget the contexts. Don't forget the population as a whole, the society, civics. Make art, make your designs, make your creations accessible, that everybody can enjoy them, that everybody has a chance to learn from them. I mean, this is also educational. This is really important. It's not just innovation and new stuff and new cool things out there, but it's also taking everybody with us. And that would be my takeaway.
Wow, thank you. Take everyone along. Yeah, I like that. That is pretty much our evening. If there still are no more questions, I would say it's time for our drinks. That's what's next. Sorry?
Sorry, I'm just going to stand a little bit in front of you just to be in the camera. Thank you so much for everyone joining here today. Also for our speakers. Also Tamiko joining us. Oh, wait. I don't know where you are. There you are. Sorry. Tamiko joining us online. Mathias and Carmin as well for the very interesting conversation. And of course, Med Emergent Art Center for organizing this together with us. So for now, just for everyone that's here, I'm sorry, Tamiko, I can't invite you to join us for the drinks. We hope to see you, of course, another time. But for the people here, we just want to invite you for one drink on the house from us, just for the wait. So we hope you will all join us there, and we can continue there. We can go to the bar. You can all order your drink, and so for everyone that's watching us online as well, thanks. I just wanted to say, like, next week we have another Innovation Cafe going, so we hope to see everyone there again. That one is by iJam. It's actually a completely different topic. It's on inflammatory bowel disease and how they're gonna find a less invasive solution to fix it, basically. So once again, we hope that everyone will be joining us then, and for now I want to wish everyone a good night. Thanks.